I'm Larry Ray, President and CEO of American Manganese Inc., listed on the TSX Venture, ticker symbol AMY, A-M-Y, with proprietary patents in the U.S., China, and South Africa. Our focus is on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. China recently legislated the responsibility for recycling onto their electric vehicle manufacturers and importers. For more information, please visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Welcome to the Goddard Report. Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is David Chesney, White Rock City Councillor and editor of the White Rock Sun. Welcome back to the Goddard Report, David.
Well, it's nice to be back, Jim, on this balmy Monday morning.
Yeah, a great weekend in the greater Vancouver area. Plus 30 temperatures, close, 80s, 90s in the old...
Bit of a heat wave 3 or 4 weeks ago, and then we've kind of slowed down, and then all of a sudden it just came back on broils, so people were having a hard time, myself included. I just went to the beach all day and walked out through the tidal pools and the water, and every time I got too hot, I flopped into the water, so thankfully I live near some water. Outside of that, I can't really function very well in the heat.
Well, White Rock is a beach, isn't it?
Life is a beach, it certainly is. So the community conversation Saturday was the last one before we break for the summer. July and August, there's so many people traveling that we take a bit of a break. And the overview, happy to see some new folks turn up. That's always heartwarming that, you get beyond the people that are already engaged in the community. But from the people that were already engaged, I think we're now seeing that they feel that they can form an advisory committee, come together, a little bit of organized outside of the community conversation, because again, the community conversation was really decided or designed to just be a fire starter for conversation to start. So we kind of went out on a high note on Saturday in that somebody picked up the mantle and sort of said, you know what, here, I'll put my name up on the board. Let's get together outside of the community conversation. We have specific interests regarding the big fire that we had in White Rock, emergency plans. We want to come before council, appear as a delegation. So that did my heart good. And, it was yet again a very, very productive gathering of the community.
What's the latest on the fire that started in a construction site and then spread to a large condominium complex? I think left over 100 different units homeless?
Well, it was ruled last week, which didn't really surprise anybody, I don't think, that it is now being investigated as an arson. And in the White Rock Sun, I put together a whole timeline. There were 4 fires that day, one starting at 4:30 in the morning, the one at 10 after 5 that took the condominium down, another one at 10:30, and then one at noon on the Semiahmoo First Nations land where they actually caught the perpetrator. He's appeared in court. I've made his name public because it's a matter of record. He's been charged with arson. I'm not insinuating at all that he is responsible for all of them, but the timeline looks very suspicious, and geographically they all kind of seem to fall into a circular route. So we definitely had a firebug loose in our community that day.
One of my friends lived in that complex. Her and her husband and their 2 dogs got out, but their life now has been changed forever. They lost everything. They're now living in a tent, I think, for the summer at least. And she believes that there was video that caught the arsonist in action.
I have not heard that. I don't know where the video cameras would have been. There's nothing on the Star of the Sea, the community center. I don't believe, unless the condominium had surveillance cameras, but I'm not sure. I've not heard that.
Well, she's a former news anchor, so she probably knows what she's talking about. And one thing she said, if you're ever going to be a fire victim in White Rock. The community outpouring of help and donations has been outstanding and continues to this moment because, as I said, a lot of people lost everything, and even though you have insurance, it'll never recover, the memories, the photographs, and video that you have of things that were lost in the fire.
Well, she's absolutely right. In our community, we've talked at length about some of the trials and tribulations that we go through on daily life here in White Rock, trying to accommodate high rises and expanded growth and, a drain on our existing systems. But at the end of the day, I've always been proud to live in White Rock, but the way the community stepped up, and it continued yesterday, all the local musicians, the White Rock Blues Society, and a gentleman named Glenn Pearson organized a big benefit. They raised over $6,500, and the White Rock Firefighters president, Scott Booth, turned up with a check for $1,000. So how good is that?
Glenn, yeah, he's a great bluesman. See him at the Sandpiper.
You know him well.
And Delaney Rose, musician, friend of mine as well. I think she was there.
Delaney Rose was there, yeah. A number of solo acts and the Mud Bay Blues Band, the Blue Voodoo, Gale Force Blues Band. I'm probably missing somebody, Naughty by Nature. It was just a great afternoon. The Cooler Kings were there. It just went on, and it was just, it was a perfect setting. There was a big outdoor grassy area patio. There was a barbecue on. I don't think I've seen such just a genuine love within our community of everybody coming together. It was a magical day, and that's, one of the beautiful things about living in a small town like White Rock. We're all on top of each other, and, we're very tight with everybody, and everybody did everything they could. Laura Cornell, who has Laura's Coffee Corner in that building that went down, within 24 hours, she had raised nearly I think it's now up to $26,000. She thought she might be able to raise $10,000, did a Kickstarter GoFundMe campaign, and it hit $20,000 in 48 hours, and now she's turned it over to the Sources Community Organization, and I think the last count she said yesterday, it's at $26,000.
Well, that's just a tremendous effort by the community of White Rock and South Surrey, because although there's North Bluff Road, I think, is the boundary between the two, nobody makes a real big distinction between them, do they?
No, they do.
Oh, they do? Well, I was going to say, what, the people north of North Bluff Road didn't kick in anything?
Oh, I'm sure they did, but I'm just saying that the people in this area certainly do differentiate whether they live in White Rock or Surrey. And the people in South Surrey are very quick. There's a cachet value now attached to South Surrey. So it's all in good fun. I mean, our MLA, Gordon Hogue, years ago adopted the love story saying and changed it to White Rock is never having to say you're Surrey. So everyone got a kind of a chuckle out of that, but there's no animosity by any stretch. We refer to them as North White Rock. They refer to themselves as South Surrey. So it's all in good fun. But, as far as people helping, you're right. Just because it was on one side of 16th Avenue, I don't for a moment think that, the White Rock Blues Society president lives in Morgan Creek, so there's a man that makes his home in South Surrey, but he pulled the forces together and got the whole Blues Society to work along with Glenn Pearson to make yesterday this huge success it was.
Now, didn't the fire affect the water supply for the city? Well,
it did. And in that sense, it was, how's the best way to explain this? We had a large Merklin water reservoir that when we bought the system from EPCOR knew that they were going to have to take the tower down because it's not earthquake-proof. Been up there for a number of years, about a 250-foot cement tower. So we had to take it down before we could construct on the property an underground tank that would hold the same amount of water. So the Merklin tower that holds 1.5 million liters was out of the equation. Now, people say, well, we ran out of water. Well, I was there at 5:30 in the morning when the fire just started, and from 5:30 to 9:30 at night, so we're talking 16 hours, there were no less than 7 fire hoses running full bore for 16 hours. Any other fire would have been knocked down within a matter of 2 hours, 3 hours at the most. It was a very difficult fire to fight given the logistics of where the fire originally started at the condominium behind where everybody was living. So the firefighters couldn't get in from the south. They had to fight it from the north, the east, and the west. So they were somewhat hampered of being able to get the water right directly onto where the main fire was all day long. It was a very difficult fire to fight. We called in four Surrey fire halls. They responded immediately. We've had in place for years an emergency system where we could tap into White Rock or to the GVRD water system on the other side of 16th and Surrey, which we did. But unfortunately, a few of the high-rise towers for, I'm not sure, maybe 6 or 8 hours were without water, and that's a terrible inconvenience. But this was a terrible fire. So, the city, had we had that Merkland Tower in place, I think we would have been fine, but it just so happens, and there was nothing we could do. We couldn't replace the Merkland Tower without taking it down because we needed the land to be able to build the new tower, or the new reservoir that's going to be underground. So it was just, it was one of those strange occurrences, but our fire department did a tremendous job. Our city staff, again, as you're well aware, I've had my level criticism with some of the ways that things are done at White Rock. I think there were a few areas where we could have done better, but we had no point of reference. We've never had a fire this big in White Rock in recent memory, so we'll put the safeguards in place should we ever have anything like this again. But you're right, we did, some of the buildings did lose water for a period of time, and as a result of draining those reservoirs down, there was some concern that because now we were taking water out of the bottom of those reservoirs, that because it was a weekend, we couldn't get Fraser Health to test the water. To be on the safe side, the mayor and our CAO instituted a boil water advisory. Better safe than sorry. Did we know for sure that we had to institute it? Well, I think given the weekend, from what I can understand, it was really a safety precaution.
Nice to know our public health officials take weekends off during emergencies.
Well, they did get here. I mean, the representatives from Fraser Health, somebody got here as quick as they could. But again, to get the water at the level that it was being drained out of the reservoirs and get it tested and get back, you can't mess with people's health in that situation.
We'll have more with David Chesney right after the break.
I'm Larry Ray, President and CEO of American Manganese Inc., listed on the TSX Venture, ticker symbol AMY, A-M-Y, with proprietary patents in the U.S., China, and South Africa. Our focus is on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. China recently legislated the responsibility for recycling onto their electric vehicle manufacturers and importers. For more information, please visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
In Goddard we trust.
Welcome back. We're speaking with David Chesney. David, White Rock, I don't think has a poor area or an area where homeless people congregate, does it?
No, as a matter of fact, I often say, you live in a small town. We had a homeless fellow living on the street here that the community basically adopted, and everybody knew him by his first name. His name was Ryan. Passed away a few years ago. His celebration of life was jammed the community center. People from every walk of our community were there to pay respect to him. He didn't want to live inside. He'd had some health issues. I think he'd had quite a serious head injury at some point in time. So he was uncomfortable. He had lived in an apartment. His sister lived here in White Rock. She had urged him to live in the basement suite. He just didn't like living inside. So he lived outside. So you're in a small town when everybody knows the homeless person by their first name. We don't have, Surrey presently has got a strip up in Wally, which they're now trying to rebrand as Central City, that's turned into sort of a tent city. It's, it's been kind of the low track in Wally for years. So they've got some problems up that way, but we don't have it right here in White Rock as such.
Now, Vancouver, of course, being a much, much larger city and the focal point for British Columbia, really. Their homeless problem is getting worse. The mayor vowed, and of course, he's by himself really in this battle, to not have a homeless person in Vancouver by 2015. Now, the latest survey shows there's more homeless people than ever. And perhaps something's happening that maybe not anticipated by most people, but Granville Mall, the pedestrian mall right through the middle of downtown Vancouver, has become somewhat of a hangout, maybe more than that, for, well, homeless people and people who are more than just homeless. They're aggressive and pretty mean to some people.
Well, yes, I think it was recently Harvey Oberfeld did a editorial piece that I read, and I found it interesting because I may have walked up Granville Street the very same day that he observed what he did. A couple of Sundays ago, my lady and I went into Vancouver, and she had to visit a friend in the hospital, so I said, well, I'm just going to putter up Granville Mall, and I'll meet you at Pacific Center or something. I'll get off the bus, and which I did, and it's a lot of 99-cent sliced pizza, sexy lingerie, rock T-shirts, and you've got your single-room occupancy hotels. There's still a few of those along the strip there, and there's appears to be quite a big youth hostel. So you've got a real mixture of people that have gravitated, but it's been that way for years. This didn't happen overnight. This has been going on as long as I can remember Granville Mall. The debate has been, should we take that mall away, put traffic back on it, bring the vibrancy back, that was one time Neon Row, one of the biggest collections of neon in North America. It was bright, it was vibrant, it was the movie theater district. Now it's painful to walk up that street and take a look at what it's deteriorated to. And on the rare occasions when I go into town to the Commodore Ballroom, coming out at night at midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, navigating, roving gangs of youth that are literally just looking for trouble, it's a scary proposition. So it didn't happen overnight. That's what I'm getting at. This could have been nipped in the bud a long time ago. I believe it was allowed to gestate and become what it has, because the age-old problem is, where are they going to go? Do you want to push them into Kitsilano or down into Yaletown? It's a giant game of whack-a-mole.
Well, sure, every time they go and quote, try to clean up a place, you don't get rid of the problem, you just move it.
Exactly, and these people have never sat around going, honey, I've always dreamt of having a little fixer-up in Cloverdale. Why don't we just pack up the squeaky-wheeled shopping cart and head out? That's not going to happen. They are going to stay where whatever they need to subsist is readily available. Do they need drugs to subsist? I think that's part of the problem. I don't think that's the main problem, but I'm sure that there's a fair amount of drug use amongst these people that are on Granville Mall.
Do you think the city can do anything about it? Do you think the city hasn't officially condoned it, but kind of turns a blind eye to it?
Well, I'm sure they don't condone it. I have no idea how they're going to fix the problem. It seems to me that somewhere I saw they bought an old hotel over on Hornby Street.
The Bosma.
Yeah, which are going to turn into a low rental housing unit. There's that beautiful old Holiday Inn that I always marveled at just up the street. I don't know whether the plans are to kind of just, Granville Street has been replaced, I believe, by Robson Street. That's where the majority of the people go when they go shopping downtown. They go to Robson Street, or now to 4th Avenue, which is becoming sort of a mirror image of Robson Street. I don't think anybody getting off a cruise ship or vacationing here is really looking for the action they're going to find on Granville Mall.
The confused Americans with the big cameras staring at the homeless people. They don't have to come to Vancouver to see that. I'm sure they can see that from the cities they come from.
Sure. It's just probably in most cities not right in the heart of because that is, that's the spine of downtown, always has been. And as I say, to some extent, Robson has somewhat taken up that slack, but it's still, people still think of Granville Street. You think of Toronto, you think of Yonge Street, you think of Vancouver, you think of Granville Street. it was an icon for decades. It was the heart of our downtown.
Well, don't forget, it was Vancouver City Council who thought neon lights were garish and non-modern, so they're the ones who had them all torn down, and now, of course, you miss that.
Well, I certainly do, and, I was, fairly young when I've seen pictures, but I would have been, probably 10 and younger, and I'm sure on rare occasions that we made a trip into Vancouver from Surrey, I witnessed it at night, but, I can't say that I have the fond memories that many of my friends that grew up and lived in Vancouver and remember taking the bus to go downtown on a Friday night to see a movie at the Stanley or whatever.
I know a lot of times dignitaries are given tours of the downtown east side, but I bet you they don't get a tour of the Granville Mall.
No, I wouldn't imagine that they do either. And again, the downtown east side, because of the single-room occupancy hotels, the concentrations, these people can find affordable housing. And back to the Wally situation, I had volunteered with a aid organization here called Friends of the Family. We delivered goods and that to refugees, and not just refugees, but people that were down and out. And most of the low rental housing in Surrey is located up in Wally. 3-story wooden apartments that were built in the late 50s, 60s, so you can probably still get a 2-bedroom apartment for $700 a month or whatever it might be. But, these people need accommodation, and that normally is what draws them to any specific area.
Well, Burnaby now has decided that Metro Town, where the BC's largest shopping mall is going to be the downtown of Burnaby, and they are letting developers buy up these little 3-story apartment blocks where retired people live and low-income working people, and they're being raised like crazy and being replaced by luxury apartment towers. So, this thing is happening everywhere. Burnaby, fortunately, doesn't have like a large homeless population. And even though the mayor doesn't like to admit it, you can see them sleeping underneath the SkyTrain guideway and their mattresses and so on. So they're there, but they just don't have the same kind of places, I guess, to congregate.
Yeah, I saw a great word to describe what you were talking about, these older apartment buildings being knocked down. They're now referring to it as demoviction. And that's exactly what, at some point in time, if the growth continues here in White Rock, given our limited land space, if we continue to build out our town center, 1/3 of our population lives within about a 3-block radius of uptown here, and it's the hillside is still very much, encompasses a lot of those 3-story wooden structures that were built in the 60s, 70s, and to that extent, a lot of the seniors live in these condominiums, apartments. So we probably at some point in time are going to see that. Right now, if you have to buy out 40, 45 owners, that gets very expensive. There's still enough land here that they haven't really had to start to knock down those apartment buildings to build new ones. It may come. I don't know when we'll reach the tipping point. We might have already reached it. There's a number of big projects that are on tap for White Rock. If they build the right type of condominium, it's still, I believe, the ones that I've seen that sell quickly, they're the high-end retirement. Mom and Dad have sold the big house, got a couple, $3 million for it, but they don't want to move into a 750-square-foot, 1-bedroom apartment. So as a result of that, if you build high-end, 2-bedroom and a den, 3 bedrooms, all cement building, wraparound, ocean view, 1.1, 1.6, $2 million for the penthouse. These are the ones that sell. You can't sell the Yaletown experience in White Rock, and a couple of developers have tried to do that to no avail. So I'm not sure exactly where we're going to get that point of saturation for White Rock. We're not there yet.
David, thanks a lot for chatting with us.
Jim, you have yourself a great summer, my friend, and we'll look forward to catching up to you in September. And as the old pop song says, we'll see you in September.
My guest has been David Chesney, White Rock City Councillor and editor of the White Rock Sun. You're listening to the Goddard Report on TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Find us on Twitter at TalkDigitalNet. Our YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. Comments or questions for the show can be emailed to info@howstreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Thanks for listening.
Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. The Goddard Report is available online and mobile at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. The Goddard Report is a production of How Street Media Incorporated.